good afternoon, everybody. There's me. Yeah, it's lovely to see you all here, so many faces. I was just thinking backstage then, I made a declaration to myself last year. I had a couple of New Year's resolutions. One was to no longer do things that terrify me, and here I am. And the second one was to stop traveling to London to talk about the glories of the North. So, you know, those who know me know that I'm basically a professional Northerner. That's it. You're going to hear it in the vowels, you'll hear it in the stories, the anecdotes. I'm kind of rivaling Andy Burnham for that tag of like the most professional Northerner. I'm going for his job soon. He knows. So listen, those seats are not as comfortable as they look, so I'm going to try and get through the next half hour. What I want to talk about is fierce community compassion. This is what I've labelled my talk today. Listen, you know, the good thing about today is that we're with people who really care. I don't think there's anyone in this room that doesn't care about community. I'm sure we're a very compassionate bunch. What I think is important is that first word, because I think there's all kinds of challenges coming down the line at us all. And I think there's something about tying those things in together, because sometimes people feel that being a community person is soft, it's woolly, it's caring. And I counter that at the moment. I think we really need to be quite fierce in our compassion and our care for our communities. So I was described as a serial social entrepreneur recently, which made my organs kind of curl up a little bit. But someone says, Ruth, just own it. You know, I have started several organisations, most of which have done really well and are about supporting especially young people from working class communities to soar, to thrive, and to feel they've got a real stake in whatever comes down the line at them. This sense that some people need to feel that they can also be the entrepreneurs and to create the change in their own lives. And so the work that I'm going to talk about is how do we not engage with communities or talk to communities or listen to communities? How do we get out of the way and let communities lead the change they need to? I don't know if anyone's a Hamilton fan here. Yeah, love Hamilton, love Hamilton. And for those people who've seen it, there's a song in it called The Room Where It Happens. And I don't want to give any spoilers away for those people who haven't seen it yet, but this is where the villain of the piece, she says spoiling everything, this is where the villain of the piece reveals his motivations. And basically he wants to be in the room where it happens, where power happens, where strategic decisions are made, and he's always on the outside. And I have never connected so deeply with a character in my life as that song, because this is my professional life. I'm constantly on the outside of the rooms where it happens. I'm invited to come and talk about things. I'm invited to come and show up with my young people. I'm invited to, you know, to be near the room where it happens, but not to be in it. And so one of the things that I'm working with alongside the people in the organisations that I lead is how do we recalibrate things a little bit so that the rooms where it happens also contains the community people who are being talked about in those rooms. This wonderful woman is in every presentation I always give, Angela Davis. As I've said many times, she looks just like my mum, to the point that my mum was arrested in France in 1971, I think it was, when she was backpacking, because they thought that she was on the FBI's most wanted list. It's just my mum. So in our family, she's like Auntie Angela. But what I get from Angela Davis is a woman who, at a time she was needed to really stand up for her community. She was there, she was eloquent, she was fierce, she was courageous, but she was a community activist. You know, a really incredible, iconic community activist, but that's what she was. And she had a courage that kind of embodied the change that she needed people to see. And it feels like for me at this moment, and I think we're a real moment of danger in the UK, and I'm not going to shy away from that in the speech. I think we can't all be Angela Davis. That's fine. I can't be an Angela Davis. But I look at her picture sometimes in my house, I've got her everywhere in my study, and I just think, how can I take hope and take more courage from people like that who, with the greatest of threats around them, stepped up, stepped forward, and kept on being that kind of authentic, powerful community voice. Because I feel that so often it's easy to sideline community as that kind of nice to have thing, rather than the kind of urgent lifeblood of everything that's important and good. So it takes a village to raise a child. That's another one of those, that's a nice off-use African proverb. Every single organisation I've ever founded. It's been there on the wall. But I think because of that, you know, people see that kind of sepia image, and that's what it makes people feel like. No, again, I think this idea of a kind of almost ferocity that's needed, because it's easy to create a village where everyone looks the same and everyone's got the same kind of experiences and everyone looks a bit like your child. It's harder to create a village where actually you're caring for other children in the same way that you would care for your own child. And you're caring for children in the care system, and you're caring for children who are difficult, and you're caring for children who are in the criminal justice system. How do we create that kind of village where actually everyone feels they've got a part to play? And I was introduced onto stage a while ago as a pushy middle class mother for working class kids. And at the time, I kind of like pulled a big face at that. That was not what I wrote in my bio. But afterwards, I thought about it, and I thought, actually, they totally nailed it. Because, you know, no one's going to go to war for their kid more than that pushy middle-class mum. And for me, it's about how do we actually get to be the pushy middle-class mum, but for them all. And as someone who's from a Nigerian family, any Nigerians in the room? Yay! There's always Nigerians in the room. I asked that question in Estonia and got one hand. So yeah, of course there's Nigerians in the room. So Nigerians in the room will know, like, the Nigerian auntie, there's no one who gets involved in your life more than a Nigerian auntie, to the point that, you know, leave me alone. But what I love about that is when I was growing up in Bradford, there were so many adults who felt they had a stake in my life. So many. The idea that it was just my parents raising me was ridiculous, because there were so many other people. And I'm from a Nigerian family with an Irish contingent as well. And the Irish auntie is as fierce as a Nigerian auntie. But I always think, my goodness, if all young people could have that kind of Nigerian or Irish auntie, but with the resources of a CEO, right? You know, it's like just getting involved with the resources, with the connections, with all the things that are needed to encourage young people to soar. So I use this slide a lot because this was probably the start of my journey in terms of understanding who I wanted to be and the change I wanted to see. And I became a teacher. I wanted to be a poet, but as I said, Nigerian family. Get a profession. So I became a teacher, and the first year of teaching, I lived in a boarding school. It was free board, and I was there as a house mom. And as I say to everyone, it was a telephone interview, which I think was key in me being appointed. But no, it definitely was key. But do you know what? I lived there for a year, loved it. Kids were great. The thing that blew my mind as someone who went to state schools in Bradford was that every Wednesday afternoon, the children were off timetable and they had critical thinking. That was it. And I was like, what is that? And critical thinking was when they talked and they debated issues of the day and they rolled things around intellectually and they challenged their teachers, and they just had time to grow and think and develop and decide how they felt morally on issues of war and peace and justice. And I was just like, wow, we never had this in my school. And then I went to teach in a state school, brilliant school, no critical thinking, apart from the gifted and talented kids. They got critical thinking, as if the other kids didn't need to think critically. And so in terms of everything that I've always thought, in terms of our system of education, from a very, very young age, we're teaching some children to lead and we're teaching some children to listen, to quietly consume. And I think the real magic could happen is if both of those groups were encouraged to do a bit more of the other. And we could encourage those children who currently are being taught to listen, to be quiet, to kind of pass their exams and move on, to feel that they can step into some leadership and to feel that they can step into rooms like this and not fall apart. Because some young people are born for rooms like this. Ida certainly wasn't. I was backstage terrified. So I really try with all our work to think about how can we get rid of some of those tiers that exist and encourage children from different backgrounds to understand the power and privilege that other children face. I became a teacher, loved teaching. Of all the jobs that I've done, teaching is the thing. If people ask me what I'm doing now, I say I'm an educator, because that was the absolute thing that I loved. And at 22 years old, I went in, you know, NQT, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. You know, I saw myself kind of, you know, what's that Robin Williams film? You know, like where they all stand on the desk. I was that teacher, you know. I remember one time I was taking my class in Moss Side in Manchester, out to the meadows to write poetry. And the deputy head was like, what are you doing? You know? And of course, in a few years, I burnt out. I completely and totally burnt out because no one teaches a 22-year-old who's idealistic about boundaries, about looking after themselves, about health, about mental health, about any of those things. And having given everything for 7 years, my health fell apart completely. And I'm still dealing with the repercussions of all that happened now. And there's something for me in that, how are we looking after those people who are putting themselves at the forefront, in the grassroots, working hard as social workers, working hard as teachers, those people who are working hard in local authority. At the moment, it feels that a lot of us are not all right. It's been a really, really, really tough few years, and then we're just carrying on as per. And one thing I've learned in my own life is when things feel too much, it's because they are too much. So I think one of my pleas today is, yes, it's a galvanizing day and we're all going to go back to our communities and do whatever, but to check in on each other and to check in with your colleagues, especially the junior ones, is everyone all right? Because if they're too tired and they're too exhausted, we're not going to be ready for the fight that's ahead. And I do believe we've got a fight ahead. There's me burning out. Stock image. So after 7 years, I left teaching. And what was really interesting at that point was my health had fallen apart. I left teaching and I started up a program called Reclaim. And those who were in the room earlier will have met the brilliant Becky, who was sat here, who's the current CEO of Reclaim. And Reclaim was a project that was designed to support young people in Manchester, in Moss Side, with finding a path that worked for them. Because so many of those black kids in Moss Side were written off before they'd even started. You know, like, oh, Moss Side, ooh. I moved to Manchester and lived very close to Moss Side. And on the first day I moved there, I thought, this is a community. With all the problems that a community have, yes. But I imagine as soon as I got there, there was like a knock on the door, someone sent some food. There were kids running in and out of my house, so I didn't even know who they were. There was a woman down the road trying to fix me up with her useless son. It was just constant, like an ebb and flow of community, and I absolutely loved it. And the idea that this community was being kind of stigmatized as just one thing, and that the kids in that area were so heavy that they were from that area. And every project that came into work with the young people was always about like gang prevention and this and that, and lots of muscular projects where we'd terrify kids about knife crime, and you'd get 12-year-old boys sat there terrified looking at these, these big men who'd done a 40-year stretch or whatever. I'm not saying that work's not important, but what about giving those boys some hope, some joy, any of that stuff? What do you want to be? Why pretend that that's the only pathway they could take? So instead, with our project, we worked on, well, what path do you want to take? Dream big. Let's bring the magic to you. Who can help you have that internship? Because let's not pretend an average kid in a council estate can get an internship somewhere amazing. They can't unless we are the pushy middle-class mums for them. So we ran Reclaim, and it was very successful. We ran it with boys, ran it with girls, ran it all around Greater Manchester, ran it in parts of North Wales. And then after about 6-7 years of running the project, one of the young girls came to me and said, I want to speak to you on behalf of the young people. With a 14-year-old self in my office, I was like, okay, what? Yes. And she said, this charity is working for the adults. It's not working for the young people. She said, you guys are winning awards and you're in The Guardian and da-da-da, and that's all good. Our lives haven't changed one bit since this project started. And if this charity really works, why aren't our lives changing? And why are the adults making decisions and putting us on stages to be brilliant, but then to get the money and stuff, you're talking about how bad our communities are and the crime and this and that and the rest of it. Would you let us read what you say about us? And it was one of those moments where you have to just go, they've got it, they've called us out, absolutely. Because we were doing that. We were talking about how amazing they were to their faces, but then talking about the levels of multiple disadvantage that these young people were facing. And that's how we were funding the work. And so instead, we started then having conversations with the young people and talking about, okay, well, how do you want us to describe you? And after multiple workshops, they came up with the idea they wanted to be the working class young people being seen, being heard, and leading change. Because they were like, there is a class system in this country. The fact you feel really uncomfortable about it, we know that there's a class system, we know we live on council estates, but let's kick the stigma out of being working class. What was really interesting in terms of the engagement or whatever you want to call it with community, at this point, this charity started belonging to them. And I went from leading from the front of the charity to instead being behind them going, go for it. What do you need? Do you need resources? Okay, fine. You want this? Okay, I'll support you. This is them having their annual walk for change where they walk through central Manchester, hundreds of young people calling for the things and the changes they want to see in life. And they were energized by it. We lost loads of funders, by the way. That's radical language, quote. But all of a sudden, you know, we weren't dreaming up ideas. Instead, these were their ideas. So this project, which was called Built by the Working Class, this was the young people talking about the fact their dads, their granddads were involved in construction of the city, but they got no part in what comes next when the buildings were built. They never got to work in those buildings. So they had a whole project called Built by the Working Class, where they had these billboards. The young people negotiated with the billboard manufacturers in Manchester, got free space. And there were about 5 of these with different young people standing in these spaces saying, we built this city, let us take a part in it, you know, now let us take our place in it. They went to Canary Wharf, they were handing out postcards all over Canary Wharf, trying to get kind of people in Canary Wharf to care. We got kicked out of Canary Wharf because apparently it's private land. But the fact that a load of Manchester kids came down here and cared enough to do that, and they had so many different campaigns, they were energized because it was theirs. And it taught me a lot about just getting out of the way. Final Reclaim campaign I'm going to share. This was, again, a 14-year-old girl watching as the riots unfolded in 2011. And on the news, there was a woman who was very frightened and was shouting that they're just feral rats, they're just feral rats. And our young people going, she's talking about kids like us. She's talking about kids like us, feral rats. And the point that she made is no one on the news picked up on that. No one thought that was a problem. So the young people set up their own clothing line called Feral Youth, where they had these different T-shirts. They sold hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these things. But, you know, that entrepreneurialism, working class kids in Manchester coming up with ideas, they were just brilliant. I loved running Reclaim, and I worked there for many years. But one thing that I found, as we became more successful, better known, Reclaim became a byword for working class youth activism, everyone wanted to engage with us. So, you know, local authority wanted to have focus groups. Academics always wanted to talk to us. People, think tanks wanted to come in. And after a while, we were like, hang on, this is completely one way. Like, they'll come along, you know, there's post-it notes, we'll have the conversations. The kids will get a £20 voucher, or we'll all go to Nando's. For what? For what? They've mined us for information. We've got nothing back. We've learned nothing about them or who they are. And this is not a two-way street at all. And the young people became really resentful of this, of politicians coming to sit with them, of people, of journalists wanting to come and talk to them, because they just said all the time that what these people just want to take from our lives and take from us, but they don't give us anything back. Who are they? And that really led to why I set up the next organisation. I'm here with my colleague Claire, who's somewhere in the room. Claire, where are you? Yeah, there she is. And we run Roots programme, and this came out of Brexit. I think Brexit's been mentioned enough today, so let's mention Brexit. So Roots as a programme came out of Brexit because you'll all remember that collective moment where we just went, huh? You know, do we know each other as a country? People were starting to look at each other in a kind of, I didn't know we felt this way, I didn't know you felt that way. So much toxic, negative feeling of different communities towards each other, and no way of knitting ourselves together. And it felt ridiculous that on one tiny island, we couldn't push ourselves outside our bubbles and learn from each other a little bit more. And so Roots became about how do we do cultural exchanges with people who have a very different life to ourselves, but have an exchange, because what happens so often is one group of people will go and watch and observe, etc., those people, but they don't invite those people back to their homes. So what Roots is about is how do we get people to have that honest exchange where there's parity, where we dial down judgment and just listen, and we learn from each other. And we understand that in order to forge relationships, we've got to just suspend the judgment, suspend the dialogue and listen. And so these are the 3 things that we're aiming for: more connection, more compassion, more curiosity. And when we started in 2017, we couldn't get this thing funded at all. Everyone was just like, oh, it's just a woolly thing. People having relationships, you know, it's a lovely thing, nice idea, Ruth, but it's not really going anywhere because there's no need for it. And we felt very strongly that actually there's an absolute need for this. This is crucial because without relationships, we've got nothing, in my belief. We have very, very little. And so we've persevered, and the thing that kept Roots going was people, ordinary people giving us £5, £10, £20, crowdfunding, because communities could see that things were happening. We run the programme for young people as well. We have Roots Futures, where we get young people from state schools and private schools and get them together. And people say to me, why do we do this work with kids in private schools? They've got everything already. Maybe so, maybe not. But unless that revolution happens soon, and I can't see it, this is the system that we're working within. And those young people, whatever our judgments are not are going to go on to be the leaders of kind of the judiciary, like the managers, the heads of police force, etc., etc. And it worries me that they have no interaction with children who have very different lives to them. And so we bring young people together and they work together on forming a vision of what the future should be. We also have community conversations where we bring people into community conversations from very different backgrounds. We bring some people who've got kind of status and position in the community, some people who don't necessarily, in first name terms, just talking about a place that they love, deciding on solutions together. So you're not the head of the local authority, you're not a head teacher, you're just Paul, you're just Sarah, you're just Imran, you're in a room together troubleshooting and thinking about what you can change. Because we genuinely believe that relationships are resistance to what's coming down the line. I'm not going to mention Clacton because I'm not going to mention Clacton, but relationships are resistance, and it's so, so important that we connect fiercely with each other and hold on to each other. This is my favourite slide. I'm going to pause this without comment because I'm not going political, but the problem is people like us have imposter syndrome sometimes, and so we don't step up and speak and lead when we need to, and some people have no imposter syndrome and fill that space. So I'm beseeching you all, like, if you can see something that needs doing in it, you are the right person to do it, because if you don't do it, someone else will. And apparently I've got 4 minutes left to talk about something so dear to my heart. But because this idea of those who can lead and those who can listen is so entrenched, one thing that I'm incredibly proud of is another organisation that I lead at the moment, which is called Rekindle, which is a supplementary school based in Manchester. It's a school for young people aged 11 to 14 years old. They come to us 4 till 7 o'clock at night, and they focus around critical thinking, around cultural education, change making, and something else I've forgotten in the stress. But what's beautiful about it is this school came out of a conversation between 8 young people in 2019 who came together. This is the meeting we had. What do young people really need? And they talked about what they hadn't had in their education. So they talked about things like the free hot meal, to feel comfortable, to have friendships, adults to support them. And then COVID happened, and to be honest, we were all just locked in and bored. So we spent a lot of time on Zoom thinking about how could we create a school and what would be at the heart of that school. And we decided that love and care would be at the heart of it. We weren't going to be scared of that. We had young people leading. We had a 17-year-old write our safeguarding policy, and it's amazing is our safeguarding policy, because young people need to know they've got to safeguard each other. It's all well and good professionals knowing how to safeguard young people. A 12-year-old will tell a 12-year-old mate first before she'll tell you anything. So we've got a safeguarding policy for our young people. We had a 19-year-old doing our governance and all our finances, and things look very different through a 19-year-old's eyes. We've got all trustees who are under the age of 30. We're doing things in a different way. And my role as the elder, as they call me, which I didn't sanction that, but my role is to get them the money they need and to get out of the way a lot of the time and let them lead. We've got the coolest school uniform, like kids actually want to wear it because it just says critical thinker. We have the best food. We've got a Caribbean cook on site. We start our evenings with meditation and Tai Chi so that young people, 12, 13 years old, can come in. It is hard being 12 and 13, for those who can remember. It's a horrible time. Teenagers are terrible people. And the young people arrive and they just have that moment to decompress, just to sit down, let the day out, have people who love and care for them. And at the end of that, we have a hot meal, phones off, where we just say, how was your day? How was your day? And for those of you that have got families, you probably have those conversations around the dinner table, and that's lovely. But not every child gets to do that. We have students who come and volunteer and do their homework with the young people. And it's just a beautiful environment, but the love and care. 1 minute. Aye. Okay. 1 minute. So these are our schools. The key thing is that we will not take like just any old community centre that's broken down. Our kids deserve the best. So that's our school in Manchester, and we're about to open a school in Tulse Hill. We also have a foundation where young people produce academic research. So we've got young people writing about things that are super, super important to them, and then we pair them with universities. I'm going to ask for 1 moment. This is really important, okay? And once I get up here, cost of living crisis. I just want to say something about this and then I will end. It's a phrase that's been used so much today. I've heard it in various rooms, and I think we just need to have a moment to just break down what a disgusting phrase it is. You know, it's the cost of just living is too much. You know, and I've had 2 examples of things that have involved young people in the past week that I just wanted to share with you, because I think we need to be the last defence against this. We had one young boy at Rekindle who tried to steal a shirt, 2 shirts, school shirts from Asda. 2 shirts for £4 from Asda, and he got caught doing it, and we had to de-escalate it and try and keep him out of the criminal justice system. He wasn't stealing £200 trainers, he was stealing a school shirt. Obviously, he shouldn't have tried to steal anything. But I think when I talk about fierce compassion, it's thinking about this and thinking about what people are going through right now, and how can we maybe not just look at those situations and not see what's behind them. And the second one is a young boy who's been caught in Oldham. It's all over Facebook. Someone talking about some scruff who's stolen a bottle of milk from outside their house. And there's footage, doorbell footage of a young boy, he looks about 11 years old. It's pitch black, and he goes and steals a pint of milk. And so it's all, and there's just adults piling in, shouting about, you know, this neighbourhood's gone to the scruffs. Come on. Why is a young boy, age 11 or 12 years old, stealing a pint of milk? Like, let's have that fierce compassion. And actually, I think that we in this room are going to be the people who are going to be the defenders of those people, to tell the stories of why we need to just envelop these people with love and care. So, to end, for me, fierce compassion, but that collective Angela Davis courage, like, we can't be sidelined outside those rooms. We are, some of us at the moment, but we need to actually be the fierce, compassionate voices for the communities that we care about. And thank you for listening, everyone.